It's David Duffett here again with another ClueCon Weekly, where we love talking with interesting people about interesting things. Is everything all right there, Lorenzo, at your end? I just heard some excitement in the background. Is everything okay?
Yeah, no, everything is fine here, so everything cool. Thank you. It's nice being here.
Good. I'm pleased about that. Well, we're very grateful that you've taken time out to come along and join us on CCW this week. And we will get into Janus before too long, I'm sure. But before we do that, I wonder if you could give people just a little bit of a taste of how you came to be in the crazy world of VoIP and what led you into VoIP and RTC.
Yeah, it was actually partially an accident because basically everything started when I started working on my master thesis at the time. Now, about 14 years ago, because even though it may not look like it, I'm quite old, unfortunately. A long time ago, I started working on my master thesis, and basically I met this person who would be then very important for my professional career later on, which is Simon Pietro Romano, who was the one of the professors in the computer science department at the time, in the networking side of things. He proposed that thesis working on a software that I never heard about at the time, which was Asterisk, and especially working on conferencing, which was something that was very much active from a standardization perspective in the IETF. And basically during that period of time, I started working on a lot on Asterisk, studying a bit how it works, working with the code and things like this. And eventually I ended up implementing...
Let me just jump in. What year would that have been, please?
That was 2006. So
right, a little bit of a while ago. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. And I remember because it's the last time Italy won the World Cup, which isn't likely to happen again in the next future. But anyway. Yeah, and so during that period of time, I eventually implemented a protocol that was called BFCP, which was at the time being standardized in the IETF. And I implemented an open source library together with another guy from Ericsson. And basically from that point on, basically I stayed at the university together with other people that would eventually join me in creating the company that is now known as Meetecho. And basically we kept on working on what at the time was a very rough prototype, so a very rough conferencing application that was standard, using standard protocols and so on. And basically kept on improving it, also keeping the research aspect very much in mind. And for instance, I remember that the very first conference I ever was to was right after I got my degree. I went to my first IETF meeting where I made a demo of this framework just to give a proof that the BFCP protocol as a protocol was actually working as expected. Also because one of the mottos at the IETF is rough consensus working code. So you may agree that everything works fine, but if you don't have code that actually proves that it runs as expected, it's not really the same thing. And so we gave that proof, luckily. And eventually, actually, fun thing is that library that I wrote such a long time ago is, as far as I know, also a bit part of FreeSwitch right now. So I think it's actually being used in some aspects of FreeSwitch for moderation aspects, because that's what the FCP, the binary fault control protocol, was, which made me, of course, really proud. So because I'm a tiny bit of FreeSwitch as well, which makes me really proud. But then, yeah. After a while, I mean, year after year, we kept on improving this. We founded a company just because we decided that it made sense to try and make a commercial, make something commercial out of what we had worked on just from a research perspective. And that's how the company was born. And so we kept on working on real-time activity. Eventually, WebRTC came to light, Janus was born, and here I am, basically, very, very much in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's to me, it's an amazing example of some real life coming out of university and university project. And I was privileged to come along to the first JanusCon last year in Naples, and it was surprising to me that you were there with effectively some of your old university colleagues.
Yeah, no, very much so. Everybody that is part of Meetecho right now has been involved in those university years one way or another. So all the co-founders got our degrees pretty much at the same time with Professor Romano. And so we all co-founded the company at the same time. But even our employees were our students at the time. So they were our students. They got their master thesis working on real-time applications related applications. So usually for something related to some standard aspects as well, or for some new feature to the application and so on. And so it's been really formative for all of us involved. And so that's why I very much remember with joy all of these years past. And whenever I can, I still contribute back to the university as well, whether it is just to give an hand when doing exams, or I make some lessons there to provide some more context to some specific issues. So for instance, I often make a presentation on the security in VoIP applications, which is something that is usually not that known in those environments. And so that allows for students to always have a very hands-on experience with all these kind of things. So they don't just study things in an abstract way, but they really practice themselves with real applications. Also because Simon, the guy that I was talking about, has a course there at the university which is exactly tailored for the study of real-time applications. So all students there can work on small applications as part of their exam, just to show that they have done something, they know how things work, which is really helpful for them as well, because it's actually an asset that they can reuse for when they'll need to hunt for a job.
Excellent. It's really heartening to hear about that interaction between the real world, if you like, and the academic world. I'm sure it's beneficial to both sides there, and another example of great community. Now, you mentioned Janus being born.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what Janus is? How you came to do it. Well, in fact, you've kind of given us part of the background, but what it is today, its functionality, and the kind of use cases it gets put into.
Yeah, Janus is, very generically speaking, a WebRTC server that we like to call general purpose. Just not that it means that it can really do anything, but in principle, it can do a lot of things at the same time. So it's not conceived for a single specific use case. And basically, I came up with a tool like this at the time, mostly because we needed something like this, especially at the very beginning. WebRTC had just come out. You could play with it using Chrome and Firefox and things like this. And there were some tools that were extending their RTP stacks in order to take advantage of WebRTC as a functionality. And so, but most of them were very vertical. So it was either a very specific SIP gateway or something that could just do conferencing or just do this other thing and so on. And instead, we wanted something that was much more generic instead. And the very first use case that I had in mind was just as a hunch, large-scale broadcasting. So I wanted to have something where I could basically inject something and then distribute it via WebRTC to a lot of people at the same time. And this isn't something that in principle you could do easily with the existing tools. So the easiest way was to create some sort of WebRTC stack, make it extensible somehow so that you could plug different behaviors in it and get different behaviors out of that. So for instance, we needed a SIP gateway, so we could have that. We needed something to do web conferencing because that's what Meetecho was at the time. So we needed to have that as well. But we also wanted to have streaming and other things and so on and so forth. And so basically this is how Janus was born in the first place. Really at the beginning, just a gateway between something that was WebRTC, this new thing, and the other phase being something that existed already. So everything in the VoIP world, anything that could be considered legacy at the time, basically. And which is also the reason why we called it Janus, because in the Roman mythology, Janus is the god of transitions. So he's the one that always has two faces, one looking at the past, one looking at the future. And so it looked like a good name for this new application that basically tried to do the same thing with RTC in mind instead. And that's also how it has evolved over time. So right now it has a few different models that allow you to implement different behaviors when handling media streams. So you could have, for instance, an application that mixes audio streams and just uses a single channel, an application that implements an SFU, something like video conferencing without mixing anything, another application that allows you to talk to the SIP word, another plugin that talks to the RTSP word, for instance, to get security cameras and plug them in WebRTC, something that allows you to do streaming and so on and so forth. Basically, and that's how the project grew. And luckily enough, I mean, this piqued the interest of a lot of people, and people ended up using Janus in very heterogeneous ways, even ways that I really didn't expect them to be used at the time, which was quite interesting for me. And of course, this is not just a merit of Janus, but also a merit of WebRTC itself. WebRTC as a technology proved to be very apt to be adapted to very different use cases, and Janus proved to be just as flexible in terms of facilitating the usage of WebRTC in scenarios that were not originally thought for WebRTC.
Right, yes, that's one of the questions I wanted to ask, because look, thinking of the commercialization that other people do around these things, you know, we can look at Asterisk and see people building PBXs and other telephony functionality. We can look at FreeSwitch and see people building, you know, carrier platforms and things like that. What are the general things that you find people are taking Janus and building around it?
Well, there's really a lot of different things. I'm always surprised when I see the variety of use cases, because of course there's the people that just need, for instance, to turn their SIP infrastructure, their VoIP infrastructure, into something that can talk WebRTC. And in this case, WebRTC Janus is a very easy tool to use as a WebRTC enabler in that sort. You
Right.
don't change anything in your SIP infrastructure. You put Janus in front of it. You have something that can use over WebRTC as well. There are people that just need it for conferencing in different fashions. So just conferences, webinars, e-learning, so all those variants over there. But then there are also a lot of very different use cases that are more advanced. So there are people that are using Janus in medical applications. There's actually a company that is using Janus in the Hollywood world. So they are basically using it for movie editing, shared movie editing between big Hollywood producers, and so on and so forth. For instance, Mozilla is using it for their augmented reality framework. So there are a lot of very different use cases that are very interesting to find out about. Really, the only limit, as far as I mean, it may sound cheesy, but really the only limit is imagination. So you just have to think what you may want to do with WebRTC, and good chances are that one way or another, Janus can help you do that. Also because it's very effective as a WebRTC enabler of sorts. So it's very easy to use Janus to either take a raw RTP streams from somewhere, like for instance an FFmpeg or a GStreamer instance, or something that comes from Asterisk or FreeSwitch, and turn it into a WebRTC broadcast of sorts. Or also at the same time take a WebRTC stream and inject it via plain RTP to talk to applications that are not WebRTC aware at all. So, and for instance, this is a presentation that I recently made at FOSDEM, where you basically have ways to very easily get a WebRTC video, pass it to some other components so that it can be processed, analyzed. You can do pretty much whatever you want with it. You can do application, artificial intelligence, machine learning stuff on this kind of things. So for instance, there are people using this functionality for doing like image processing or identity verification or transcription, or in case this is an audio stream, and so on and so forth. So this is just to summarize the fact that it's very easy to just see Janus as a WebRTC enabler, so that if you have something that doesn't know what WebRTC is, but can talk the standard protocols like RTP and a few others, then good chances are that you can turn that into a WebRTC application and take advantage of that in a browser very easily.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for explaining that. It sounds amazingly flexible. You mentioned FOSDEM there. Was that your first FOSDEM, Lorenzo?
No, my first FOSDEM was, I think, 5 years ago. So yeah.
And you've been kept coming back ever since, have you?
Yeah, pretty much so. The only one I missed was last year because of a conflict with another event, and I missed it terribly. So I was really happy to come back this year. So also because the first FOSDEM I ever went to was actually also the first event where I got to meet a lot of the people that I know in the RTC world today. So that's where I first met Saul, for instance, who now works for Jitsi, where I also met in person for the first time Daniel Miconda from Camailo, who told me about Camailo World. I met Lorenzo Mangani, the other Lorenzo, who talked to me about OpenSIPs, for instance. And that's what actually got me into participating in more events. So FOSDEM was really the spark that actually allowed me to start invading other events as well, to start hammering everybody about Janus, basically.
Oh, that's great, because that's been to our benefit to see you show up at different events that enjoyed participation of. And one of those events, of course, that we've met at is Astricon. You've been an Astricon attendee over some years. And I think you were in also in IT Expo, and maybe not this year, but last year or the year before, was it, in Fort Lauderdale?
Yeah, I was there last year. It was actually the conference that caused the conflict with FOSDEM at the time. They happened pretty much in the same days.
Right, okay. But this time you were back in FOSDEM, and as well as being in Lorenzo to meet other people and to get more involved in general community activities. What other things come out of FOSDEM for you, or what other things does FOSDEM allow you to give in?
Now, FOSDEM is a great opportunity, first of all, to learn about what else is happening in RTC, because of course it's easy to work a lot on what you are doing and focus on that, but then there are a lot of other things that are happening in other projects as well, which is always a very good source of stimulus, at least for me, because it allows me to see what other people are working on, if there are some things that I could actually benefit from, so some things that maybe Janus could benefit from, or maybe also chances to collaborate with other projects. So, for instance, I mentioned Lorenzo Miniero, who I first met at FOSDEM many years ago. That was actually the spark to start a very nice relationship between our two companies. So we started working on ways to feed them with events, and then we never stopped interacting with each other, working together and doing interesting things together. So it's really a very live event. So it's any live event. So it's something that you can always learn from, no matter how expert you think you are on some aspects. You always find something that you didn't know about. And of course, it's a very good opportunity to get to talk to people that you know you like, that you know that are working in the same world as you are, but you don't get to meet as often as you'd like, basically. So that's of course part of that. So the interaction aspect is not to be underestimated in there. FOSDEM is very good at that.
Yes, indeed. Sadly, I've never got to go because of conflicts with various other things. But everybody that goes has a very good report, and they seem to want to go back every year. So that's very positive.
Yeah, it's a very weird event the first time you get there, because it's free, completely free for 2 days, and then you get dozens of rooms that are devoted to a lot of different things, and those rooms are very often full. So anything that you are interested in attending, you have to go there in advance, otherwise you miss it. Then you are basically in the same space with 10,000 people. I don't know how many there are, so it can be disorienting the first time you go there, but then you get used to it, and it's very much a really nice event to attend to, that I always look forward to every year.
Ah, good. Now, talking of events every year, last year was the first year for JanusCon. Tell us a little bit about how you decided to run an event, because you've been participating in other people's events for a good long time, and just talk us through the event as well, because it was the first one. As far I was blessed to attend, and as far as I could see, it was a screaming success. But tell us about it from where you sit.
Yeah, no, we're very happy it was a success, also because it was not something that was to give for granted at all. It was a first event, and so there's always the variable there. But actually, yeah, I attended other events, as I explained. I attend FOSDEM, I attend Camille World, OpenShift Summit, ClueCon last year, the Astricon as well. So I was always fascinated by how the community behaved in those events, and the feeling of community that there was at those events. So I really liked the way that basically this could create some sort of a community, how this could actually help both sides of both the attendees and the people organizing the event. It looked like, I really liked the feeling that you had at those events. So, and I felt that it could something that we as a community could also benefit from, because we may not be as popular as all of these frameworks that I mentioned so far, but we have our small niche, And I believe that we have a very strong and active community as well. And so last year it felt like the right time to try and do something like this for us as well, to see if we could actually get pretty much the same kind of feeling that I was getting just as an external attendee for our own event as well. And so I tried to learn as much as possible in the year before from all of the events that I attended to, and of course this included ClueCon as well. So I basically studied how the guys there were organizing everything, how they were interacting, how they were organizing everything, just to make sure that I took the best out of that to try and do the same thing. And eventually we were very lucky because we got a very high response in terms of submission. A lot of people contributed, wanted to share something about whether it was just Janus, about WebRTC, about VoIP, and so on. We had a very high participation, in my opinion, so much higher than we expected. We had about 100 people, so which for a first event was really huge for us. We had companies sponsoring the event as well, which was also huge because it's always a risk to invest in something that you don't know how it will end up. So it was a risk for us, even more so for the sponsors. So I still thank them to this day. And eventually, I'm really happy about how it came out. And you are being modest here by just saying that you attended, because I feel you were a big part of that. You were very kind to offer your support in helping organize the VoIP on the Beach side of event, and I'm seeing it on the last day, which I felt was a very powerful moment of the conference as well. So we tried something unusual, and I think it worked. It worked at the end. And long story short, of course, we are trying to do this again for next year. So we don't have an official date yet, but it will be at the end of September again, at the same location, same venue, because it worked great last time and it didn't make sense to change it. I think people there enjoyed the location, enjoyed the food, enjoyed the nice weather, and so on. And I think they enjoyed the content as well. So hopefully we'll try to replicate the same experience that we provided last year, and hopefully improve on it as well. And of course, since it's not official yet, we haven't opened the call for paper yet, but that will happen very soon. So if you're interested, just visit januscon.it and stay tuned, basically.
Great stuff. Yes, well worth popping in the diary that last week of September. And it fits nicely because, of course, ClueCon is in August and Astricon is traditionally in October. So having something in September there in Europe is a good thing. It did go very well last time. And one of my particular memories is, although there's lots of great content and lots of great presentations delivered, one of the memories that stands out in my mind is walking through the hotel and noticing Dan Christian Bogos from CG Rates on the outside of the hotel. He was sort of locked outside it. I think he'd kind of gone out of a door and it shut behind him and there wasn't a way back in. And either he'd climbed some stairs or he'd just found himself in this weird place. And so I was able to let him back in.
Yeah, luckily he found his way back for when his presentation was supposed to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just funny to see him there. I'd not. It was quite early on in the conference, so I'd not bumped into him, and then just to see him outside, it was
maybe he went out there on purpose, also because it was a very sunny day. There was the sea outside, so maybe he said, "Why am I inside? I should go outside and enjoy the day."
It could have been, of course, one of the other Lorenzos and Celeste, of course, from QXIP, were both contributors to the success of JanusCon last year as well.
Yeah, very much so. So because each year they helped organize the OpenSIP Summit, which I think is a great event as well. And so since they had a great deal of experience on that, and we had this great relationship, as I was saying, we asked them from the very beginning to help us organize all this. And I think they did an amazing job, especially in terms of making the event known to a lot of people as much as possible. So they had a great social media manager that took care of all of these aspects. They helped us a lot in all of the organization aspects in general. So all of the things that we may not have thought of, they always had some insight to clarify that may be something to look into. And so eventually I think that they did a great job and it turned out great. And actually we are asking them to help us again this year. So hopefully they'll be on board as well.
a repeat of that success. That sounds really good. Coming back to Janus as a project, what is next for Janus?
Yeah, right now we are working a lot on the on stabilizing the platform. Let's say improving its robustness in general, because it's already very stable and robust as it is. But we are working a lot on ironing out the bugs, so figuring ways to be notified in advance when things go wrong and so on. And so, for instance, last year at Camellia World, I explained all our efforts on defuzzing aspects, so how you can actually simulate the injection of malicious packets and so on, and make sure that Janus is robust enough not to crash when it receives something like this, and do this in an automated way using OSS Fuzz, which is a Google Cloud infrastructure. But then we're also working on other related aspects. So, for instance, we started using continuous integration via Travis. We are starting to work on automated tests that we can run that can basically generate WebRTC sessions to see if we still behave as we should after we make some changes and all of these things. So we are working a lot on ensuring that things go smoothly, and we are never surprised by any change that we or other people may make, or maybe browsers may make at the same time as well. And of course, we are working on some interesting use cases. So, for instance, I briefly mentioned the artificial intelligence and machine learning aspect. This is something that we are still pushing on. Something that one of our employees, Paolo, presented at JanusCon last year, is still working on it, and we are improving it also as part of some very specific applications that we are building. We are also working a lot on IETF meetings, because we are the official remote participation providers for IETF meetings that happen 3 times a year all over the world. The next one will be in March in Vancouver. And starting now, we will also be responsible for distributing these sessions over YouTube Live as well. So we are not just doing this on WebRTC, we'll also stream some of these sessions on YouTube at the same time, which means that we will need to take an existing session, mix it in real time, push it on YouTube, and distribute it to a wider audience that way. So that took some other efforts on our side, which was a very intriguing aspect, because typically we don't work a lot on mixing and stuff like this. This is usually something that FreeSwitch is much better at doing. But we tried to work on some of these aspects as well for our own needs, and it was an interesting challenge for us. And
great stuff. Yeah, that's I mean, you already have a very good reputation for the work you do at the IETF, and so to go to streaming as well sounds an exciting move.
Yeah, and it's also, we always call it the perfect testbed for applications like this, because the IETF community is very open, because everything is about standards and so on, but it's also very demanding because they expect things to work smoothly. Something happens during the remote participation to a key participant, it may actually affect the discussions that they are having there, and they don't have a lot of time during the week to discuss their things. So you really have to be at the best of your game. So the IETF has always proved to be a very good testbed for us for testing new things, but also test that everything is stable at the same time. So, for instance, it's also one of the first places where we actually put Janus in production ourselves, because at the beginning, even if we were providing some ways to attend sessions via WebRTC, it was not via Janus directly, it was using some other components. And then we slowly introduced some innovations. So, for instance, output support, then we started providing WebRTC support, then we started using Janus for that, and now Janus is used everywhere for the remote participation support in the IETF, which is great for us, because it allows us to test it into the wildest of configurations, because you can have people from all over the world trying to present, and so it gives us the perfect opportunity to make sure that everything works in all cases.
Excellent. Now, your company is Meetecho, and I imagine that one of the ways that Meetecho commercializes around Janus is by providing support or implementation help and things like that. But is there any other things that Meetecho does?
Yeah, we do a few things. So one of the main activities is, of course, consulting. So people that are interested in using Janus for something and may need our help, be it for implementing a new plugin, integrating Janus into their own framework, designing, implementing things, and so on. So consulting in general, we have commercial support. We have also commercial licensing available as well, because Janus is available under a GPL version 3 license, which is usually fine for most people. For some other companies, it may not be the same. They may need an ad hoc commercial license, and we can provide that as well. But we also provide the streaming of live events as a service as well, which means that if, for instance, you take a conference like JanusCon, for instance, and you want to stream all the sessions in real time over the internet and record the presentations to then publish them over YouTube for as part of the proceedings of the conference. This is part of the services that we provide for other conferences as well. So the IETF is one of these cases, but we are also one of the official partners to the ACM to actually provide the same service and the same support for ACM conferences all over the world. And so we often go all over the world to set up the streaming of all of these events. So hooking up to the mixer, placing the cameras, capturing everything, setting up the pages to watch the event via WebRTC and things like this. And this is actually, this may not seem much, but this has actually proved to be a very good source of income as well, because it's the closest thing we have to a product in our company, considering that our main activity is actually working on an open source application that is not really the same thing as having a product that you can then just sell, basically.
Yeah, but it sounds like a very good experience for you guys to sort of rock up at different events and look after the streaming and the broadcast and all that kind of stuff. And of course, as you mentioned, you're seeing your technology in real use case scenarios, and of course can learn from that too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is also one of the reasons why I was very happy that eventually we released Janus as open source, because it basically placed us on the radar of a lot of people that otherwise wouldn't have even looked at us. Because one thing is, I can see the project, I can download it, I can play with it myself, and I can do whatever I want with it. And if I need help, I contact them. And another thing is, I have to ask for a demo. I need to basically get in touch with these guys, and in order to see how things work. And besides being open source, it meant that a lot of people started contributing things back as well, which meant not only contributing code, but also contributing their feedback, contributing tests. So basically the Janus is only as robust and stable as it is right now, only because basically a lot of people helped it being that way. Because otherwise, if it had only been me in these past few years working on the code, probably there would have been bugs, errors, and so on that I would never have caught and that other people caught instead. So it's always been very helpful for us. So not only the ability and to actually use Janus in different use cases for us, but also the ability for other people to use Janus in several different setups and providing their feedback and experience back to us.
The power of open source community. Excellent.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, well, look, Lorenzo, it's been great having you along. Is there anything you would like to say that we haven't covered just yet before we clear down?
No, I think we covered a lot of stuff, so it was a really interesting conversation for me. So I just want to remind about JanusCon just as a very last minute. So if you're interested in attending the event, just visit januscon.it to get some more information, and be assured that we'll release some more information soon enough. So, I mean, Napoli is a nice city. If you've never been there, it's...
Yes, I can vouch for that. JanusCon
exactly
is the place to go, and that's also where the call for speakers will be published, is it?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll put a link over there so that people that are interested in sharing their experience, and we encourage them to do so, can just go there and submit a proposal.
Great. Okay, well, thank you very, very much for taking the time to come on ClueCon Weekly. We really appreciate it, Lorenzo.
And thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome. I am hoping to get all three Lorenzos onto a quick recording in the ClueCon Weekly studios at some stage, but we'll look forward to that in the future. But in the meantime, thank you so much.
Thank you.